Have you ever watched someone you love turn into a stranger, right in front of a crowd? Have you ever been hurt so deeply that silence became your only weapon? This isn't just another story. This is about a woman, a mother-to-be, who was humiliated in public by the very man she trusted most. But trust me, her quiet exit wasn't weakness, it was strategy. And what came next? It flipped everything. Stay with me. You won't regret it. The ballroom held its breath. Hundreds of champagne flutes froze mid-air. Forks stopped halfway to painted lips. The clinking of silverware turned to eerie silence. And then, slap. A single sound echoed like a gunshot beneath the chandeliers of the tranquil Grand Hotel. Every head turned. There, in the middle of the marble floor, stood a pregnant woman in a silk navy gown, one hand pressed against her burning cheek, her dark hair slightly disheveled from the force of the blow. Her eyes, wide and tearless, locked on the man standing opposite her, her husband, Daniel Wallace, CEO of Wallace Capital, billionaire, Manhattan's most powerful young mogul, and tonight apparently a man who had just slapped his 6 months pregnant wife in public. The room, once buzzing with gala energy and gossip, fell into an unnatural stillness. No one moved, no one spoke. Even the string quartet on stage went silent, and then came Daniel's voice. Loud, cold, final. You should have stayed home, Lily. This isn't your world anymore. Gasps spread through the crowd like a tidal wave. Cameras clicked. Whispers surged. Daniel didn't even flinch. He straightened his tuxedo, smoothed his hair, and turned back toward the stage where his mistress waited, lips curled into a smug smirk. But the woman he just humiliated? She didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She didn't even speak. Lily Nguyen simply adjusted the strap of her gown, stood taller, and turned her back on everyone. Without a single word, she walked out of the ballroom, heels tapping rhythmically on polished marble, her hand protectively resting on her pregnant belly. She exited with the kind of silence that screamed louder than any slap. But what no one knew, what not even Daniel knew, was that her exit that night wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning. Just hours earlier, Lily had stood in front of the mirror of their penthouse suite, touching her round belly and whispering soft words to the child growing inside her. You're gonna be okay, she had said, no matter what happens tonight. She had known something wasn't right. She always knew, even when Daniel kissed her forehead, absent-mindedly, even when he said, "Don't be late to the gala. Wear the blue one, you know, the one that makes you look less tired." She had chosen silence so many times before. She had let him talk over her, disappear for days, cancel baby appointments, hide lipstick stains behind work dinners. She had chosen to stay, for the child, for the illusion. But tonight, she hadn't expected this. The Diamond Bridge Gala was Manhattan's crown jewel charity event. It was Daniel's night to shine, to receive the Businessman of the Year award. He'd insisted Lily attend, despite her visible pregnancy and rising exhaustion. Smile and clap at the right moments, he said with a practiced grin. And don't cause a scene. As always, Lily complied. She had arrived at the gala 30 minutes early, wearing a navy silk gown that hugged her bump gently. Her makeup was subtle, her presence quiet. She stayed close to the wall, sipping water, offering polite smiles to strangers who barely glanced at her name tag. Daniel arrived late as always. But he didn't come alone. He walked in with Sabrina Westwood on his arm. 26, blonde, and scandalously dressed in a sheer diamond-crusted gown, Sabrina was a rising fashion influencer with 1 million followers and no shame. The whispers started the second they stepped onto the red carpet together. "Is that Daniel's assistant?" one woman murmured. "No," another corrected. "That's his girlfriend, everyone knows. His wife's still here though, poor thing." Lily heard every word. She always did. But she smiled, nodded, and sat quietly at their table. She touched her belly and whispered again, "We're stronger than this." The ceremony began. The host made jokes. The cameras rolled. Then came Daniel's moment. He took the stage, perfectly timed spotlights catching every angle of his designer tuxedo and movie star smile. Lily's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to believe he wouldn't do it, not in front of everyone. Not to her. She was wrong. And of course, Daniel said into the microphone, "There's one person I owe everything to. The woman who inspires me every day. The woman who taught me how to live, Sabrina Westwood." The room gasped again. Sabrina, sitting at their table, stood slowly, smirking as she walked up to the stage and kissed Daniel on the cheek. And then, just as Lily rose from her seat, her face pale, her hands trembling, Sabrina turned, descended the stairs, and made a beeline straight toward her. "You should go home," Sabrina whispered, bending slightly so only Lily could hear. "You're embarrassing yourself. And honestly, that dress is tragic." Lily said nothing. Sabrina chuckled, leaning in closer. "He told me you were fragile, that you wouldn't last." And that's when Lily whispered, barely loud enough to be heard, "You'll never replace me." The next moment came like thunder. Daniel stormed down from the stage, his steps furious. Without warning, he struck Lily across the face with an open hand. The sound of the slap, sharp, jarring, rang through the room. And with it, Lily's world shattered. But only for a second. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply looked at Daniel, her husband of 3 years, and realized something deeply, irrevocably final. He was never coming back. And that was okay. She didn't need him anymore. She turned, lifted her head, and walked out into the night, leaving the ballroom, the betrayal, and the past behind her. What no one saw was the phone call she made the moment the doors closed behind her. One call. To one man. A man more powerful than Daniel. A man who owed her everything. And just like that, the story turned. The night air bit against her skin as Lily stepped out of the ballroom and into the cold Manhattan evening. She didn't cry. Not yet. She couldn't afford to fall apart. Not here. Not now. Her heels clicked against the concrete as she moved past paparazzi who were too stunned to lift their cameras. She was invisible to them, just another humiliated wife, discarded like yesterday's news. But she wasn't. Not anymore. With trembling fingers, she pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in nearly 3 years. A number she had memorized but buried deep, one reserved only for moments of absolute desperation. It rang twice. Then a voice answered, calm, low, and unmistakably powerful. "Lily?" Her voice cracked for the first time that night. "It's time." There was silence on the other end, then the quiet sound of a chair being pushed back. "Where are you?" "The Tranquil Grand Hotel," she whispered, wrapping her arms around her belly. "Can you send someone?" "You don't need someone," the voice replied. "I'm coming myself." The call ended, and just like that, the woman Daniel had slapped out of his life no longer existed. In her place stood someone he never truly knew. 3 years ago, before Lily became Mrs. Daniel Wallace, she was just Lily Nguyen, a business grad working quietly at a cafe in Brooklyn. She lived in a 1-bedroom walk-up, paid her own student loans, and sent half her paycheck back to her parents in Garden Grove. At least, that's what everyone thought. What no one knew, not even Daniel, was that Lily wasn't just any Vietnamese-American girl from the neighborhood. She was the only daughter of Victor Nguyen, the late founder of Blue Ember Holdings, a billion-dollar international tech fund known for buying failing startups and turning them into unicorns. Victor had raised her to stay humble, to live quietly, and to never rely on a man for anything. But when he died suddenly in a plane crash, Lily was only 22, and his empire passed into a carefully structured trust in her name, managed by her godfather and business mentor, Elias Cole. Elias. That was the man on the other end of the call. Lily hadn't touched the fortune, not a penny. She wanted to live her life on her own terms, in her own way. She had walked away from the wealth, the power, the security, all because she believed in love. She believed in Daniel. And now, she was done believing. Back inside the ballroom, Daniel was all smiles again, or at least pretending to be. Sabrina clung to his arm like a designer clutch, laughing too loudly, soaking up the attention that came with scandal. He whispered to the press that Lily had emotional issues, that the pregnancy was difficult, and she'd left to get some air. But behind the scenes, his hands trembled. He hadn't expected Lily to fight back. He hadn't expected her to say anything. She was supposed to be quiet, submissive, and visible. He checked his phone. No calls, no messages. He leaned into Sabrina. "Have someone follow her." Sabrina blinked. "What?" "She's too calm," he muttered. "Something's off." 20 minutes later, a black Rolls-Royce pulled up to the side entrance of the hotel. A tall man in a midnight gray suit stepped out, sharp jawline, silver cufflinks, the kind of presence that didn't need a bodyguard because he was the danger. Elias Cole. Lily was waiting near the valet. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steel. Without a word, Elias opened the door for her. She slid inside. He followed. The car pulled away, gliding into the Manhattan night. "You should have called me the moment he laid hands on you," Elias said, breaking the silence. "He didn't hit me before," Lily replied. "He just ignored me." "That's worse," Elias muttered. Lily stared out the window. "I didn't want to be that woman, the one who needs a man to rescue her." "You're not," he said firmly. "You're the one who built her own escape." She smiled faintly. "I want out, Elias. Legally, financially, completely. But I want to do it my way, not just a quiet divorce." Elias nodded. "What do you have in mind?" She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "I want him to lose everything he thinks he owns." Meanwhile, back in Daniel's office, 12 floors above the gala, Sabrina was helping herself to champagne. She kicked off her heels, laughed at headlines pouring in from page 6, and tossed her coat over Lily's desk. Daniel was pacing, restless, anxious. "She's not calling. She's not coming back. Why hasn't she called?" Sabrina rolled her eyes. "She's probably crying in a bathroom somewhere. You humiliated her in public. She was supposed to leave quietly. You slapped her in front of New York's richest people, Daniel." He grabbed his phone and tried to call Lily. No answer. Tried again. Nothing. Lily, meanwhile, arrived at the Jade Tower, a private high-security residence that belonged to her family's holding company. She hadn't set foot inside in nearly 4 years. The doorman bowed. The concierge greeted her with her original name, "Welcome home, Miss Nguyen." Inside the penthouse, everything was untouched, just as her father had left it. Photos, art, original paperwork, keys to assets spread across 3 continents. She walked into the master bedroom, peeled off her gown, and stood before a full-length mirror. Her cheek was still slightly red. Her belly was round and full of life. She didn't see weakness. She saw purpose. The Lily who had stood by silently for years was gone. By morning, the media had exploded. Photos of Daniel slapping his pregnant wife were everywhere. News anchors debated it. Commentators ripped him apart. Sabrina posted a cryptic story, "Only the strong survive," and then deleted it. But the real storm hadn't even begun. Because at 9 a.m., Daniel Wallace received an email from Nguyen Cole Legal Group. Subject: Notice of divorce proceedings and immediate separation of assets. Attached: documents, receipts, photos. A 147-page dossier of infidelity, embezzlement, and tax manipulation tied to his name, and a signature at the bottom. Lily M. Nguyen Wallace. The slap was public, but her revenge, it would be legendary, and it had only just begun. Daniel Wallace was not a man used to losing. He was a man of precision, of control. Every meeting, every merger, every media headline, carefully calculated to benefit him. So when his wife didn't crawl back after the most humiliating night of her life, Daniel began to feel something foreign, something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. It crept in slowly at first, as silence. Lily didn't call. She didn't return home. She didn't even post a cryptic message on social media like most scorned socialites. She simply vanished. By morning, his penthouse was empty. Her things were gone. Her name wiped from the security registry. Daniel paced his office overlooking Wall Street, coffee untouched, eyes locked on the screen in front of him. His legal team had just emailed him again. The documents were real, watermarked, notarized. He clicked open one attachment, a digital asset transfer request. She had frozen the trust fund he'd been accessing for the last 2 years. The one she had claimed was a family emergency fund. His fingers hovered over the mouse. Frozen. "Sir," his assistant Brandon poked his head in. "There's someone here to see you, from the Department of Financial Integrity." Daniel blinked. "The what?" Brandon lowered his voice. "They have a warrant." 2 blocks away, inside a high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist marble decor, Lily sat with Elias and 3 attorneys. She wore no makeup. A white blouse, slacks, her hair tied back, professional, unshakable. One lawyer, Monica Tran, known for winning impossible cases, was walking her through the steps of a full corporate audit. "We've already found inconsistencies in Wallace Capital's quarterly reports," Monica said, sliding papers toward Lily. "Funds routed through Cayman Islands, private consulting firms set up under fake names. There's enough here for the IRS to take a second look, and maybe the FBI." Lily didn't flinch. "Daniel thought I was dumb," she said softly. "He never realized I saw everything. I just chose not to react." "You're not dumb," Elias said. "You were trusting. There's a difference." Lily nodded once. Let's move forward with everything, but I want it quiet. Let him feel the ground shift before he realizes it's collapsing. By noon, Daniel's phone rang again. This time it wasn't a lawyer, it was his father, Gregory Wallace. A legend in finance, ruthless, cold, and absolutely image-obsessed. "What the hell are you doing?" Gregory's voice roared through the speaker. "You assaulted your wife, in public, while she's pregnant. Do you realize what this is doing to our stock?" Daniel rubbed his temples. "I didn't plan it like that, Dad. She provoked me." "You're a CEO," Gregory snapped. "Not a bar brawler. And now there's talk that her trust owns part of our venture funds. Did you marry her for leverage?" Daniel paused, a beat too long. Gregory's voice dropped. "You idiot." "I thought she was just some bookstore girl," Daniel hissed. "I didn't know she was Victor Nguyen's heir." Nobody knew. Gregory laughed bitterly. "Everyone knows now." And then he hung up. Back at Jade Tower, Lily stood on the rooftop, sipping hot tea, looking out over the skyline she once viewed from Daniel's arm. She'd lived in his shadow for years, smiled through client dinners, endured jokes about how lucky she was. They called her pretty, quiet, sweet, never brilliant, strategic, or dangerous. But that was changing now. Monica emerged behind her. "The board at Wallace Capital is holding a closed-door session. 3 members have already called to ask if you'll speak." Lily raised an eyebrow. "They want me on the record?" "They want to survive the storm," Monica said. "You're not a victim anymore. You're the leverage." Lily thought for a long moment. "Schedule it. But I'm not coming in as Mrs. Wallace." Monica smiled. Across the city, Sabrina scrolled through her phone at a spa in Tribeca, frowning. The headlines were getting worse. She was being dragged online. The slap was replayed in slow motion across TikTok, with users overlaying dramatic music and side-by-side clips of Lily leaving like a queen. "She's playing the sympathy card," Sabrina muttered, tossing her phone aside. Her friend Camille raised an eyebrow. "Girl, she owns sympathy now. She's trending under Lily deserves better. Even celebrities are commenting." Sabrina sat up. "She's poor. What is she gonna do? Cry on Instagram?" Camille hesitated. "Actually, turns out she's not poor. She's Victor Nguyen's daughter." Sabrina blinked. "Who?" "Founder of Blue Ember, the tech fund that backed most of Silicon Valley's top startups. He died in a jet crash, left the entire empire to her, quietly." Sabrina's stomach dropped. "Wait, she's a billionaire?" Camille nodded slowly. "You didn't know?" Sabrina reached for her phone with shaking fingers. This was bad. This was very bad. At Wallace Capital headquarters, Daniel tried to salvage what he could. He ordered the PR team to launch a counter-narrative. "Paint it like she's unstable," he told them. "Make her sound erratic, hormonal, emotional." But the team just stared back, uncomfortable. "You can't fight this, sir," his lead publicist finally said. "She has the world's sympathy, and now we're hearing she has hard evidence of insider trading, tied to your name." Daniel's blood ran cold. "And one more thing," the publicist added. "The building's lease? The penthouse? Even the summer home in the Hamptons? What about them? They're all under her family's shell corporations. You don't technically own anything." That night, as Manhattan lit up in gold and steel, Lily stood in front of a mirror in her new residence. She ran her hands over her belly. 6 months. A boy. Strong heartbeat. She would raise him in truth, in power, in peace. She pulled out her phone and typed a single message. To Daniel Wallace. "Next time you raise your hand, make sure it's not against the one person who could ruin you." She didn't hit send. Not yet. She would wait. Just a little longer. Let him sweat. Let him squirm. This was only the beginning. Sabrina Westwood had always believed she was untouchable. From her first viral video at 19 to her carefully curated brand partnerships, she had built an empire out of image. Perfect lighting, perfect angles, perfect captions. That was her currency. When she met Daniel Wallace, it was supposed to be her next big upgrade. A billionaire husband, a new last name, a seat at the table of New York's elite. But after the gala, everything began to unravel. First came the headlines. Pregnant wife slapped at gala while husband smiles with mistress. Then the video, a slow-motion reel of the moment. Daniel struck Lily, paired with TikTok edits showing Lily's silent walkout. Every influencer, every lifestyle blogger, every tabloid ran with it. And the comments? Brutal. Team Lily? She took that slap like a queen and walked out like a boss. Meanwhile, Sabrina looks like she's trying to audition for Real Housewives of Hell. Sabrina watched in disbelief as her follower count dropped by the minute. Brand deals paused. PR reps ghosted her. The public no longer saw her as Daniel's glamorous new love. They saw her as the side chick who laughed while a pregnant woman was hit. By midweek, her management dropped her. "I'm being cancelled over someone who used to work retail," she hissed to her reflection in her Soho condo. And then her phone rang. It was her mother. "I told you," her mother said flatly, "women like you don't win in the end. Especially not when you build castles on someone else's broken home." The line went dead. Sabrina's hands trembled. She needed to fix this. Fast. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in his private office, staring at 3 cease and desist letters. 2 from Lily's lawyers, 1 from the Nguyen Cole Foundation, demanding a public apology and full separation of assets within 30 days. His hands clenched the edge of his mahogany desk. "This isn't happening," he muttered. "She's bluffing." But the truth was, she wasn't. And the worst part? Everyone was siding with her. In the boardroom at Wallace Capital, Gregory Wallace took his seat at the head of the table. His expression was carved in stone. To his right sat the board's legal counsel. To his left, 2 senior investors. And across the room, joining via secure video conference, was the last person Daniel expected to see. Lily. She looked different. Sharp, elegant, calm, not a tear in sight. "Let's get to it," she said, her voice steady. "Daniel forged documents using our joint trust to invest in high-risk accounts without board consent. He's committed at least 3 SEC violations." Daniel lunged forward. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do," Lily cut in, "because I'm the beneficiary of the Nguyen Cole family office, and our firm owns 22% of your capital pipeline." Dead silence. Gregory closed his eyes. "She's telling the truth," the legal counsel confirmed. "It checks out." Lily leaned forward, her expression icy. "I'm not asking for a fight," she said. "I'm offering an option. Resign quietly. Let the board take over. Or this becomes public. Headlines, subpoenas, discovery, everything." Daniel opened his mouth. But nothing came out, because for the first time in his life, he had nothing left to say. Back in her suite, Lily rested on the sofa with a warm mug of ginger tea. The baby kicked gently, as if sensing her calm. She whispered, "Almost there, little one." Elias entered, holding a sleek tablet. "Your public approval rating is off the charts. You've become a symbol. Strength, silence, revenge. We could use this." Lily smiled faintly. "I don't want fame. I just want peace. But I won't let people rewrite my story." Elias nodded. "One more thing. We have surveillance footage." Lily looked up. "Of?" "The night before the gala, Daniel and Sabrina. A hotel suite. One of your hotels." Lily blinked. Elias added, "Sabrina didn't know the cameras were running. They didn't check in under aliases. The staff recognized them." He handed her the tablet. Lily pressed play. There they were, Daniel and Sabrina, wrapped around each other, oblivious to everything. "I'm going to be the next Mrs. Wallace," Sabrina giggled on screen. "No," Daniel replied. "You're the fun. She's the name." Lily didn't flinch. She simply exhaled, handed the tablet back, and said, "Release it." That evening, the footage leaked. Screens lit up around the world. Sabrina's voice, clear and smug. Daniel's betrayal, undeniable. It was no longer just a scandal. It was a global meltdown. Sabrina's last sponsor dropped her. Her credit cards were frozen, and her apartment, eviction notice. She banged on Daniel's door at midnight, mascara streaked, her voice shrill. "You ruined me. Fix this." Daniel stared at her blankly. "I don't have access to anything anymore," he said. "It's all hers. It was always hers." Sabrina's lip trembled. "You said she was nothing." "She was everything," he whispered, "and I never saw it." Then he slammed the door in her face. At dawn, Lily walked through the private gardens of the Nguyen estate. She wore flats, a flowing dress, and no makeup. The wind tousled her hair. A security guard handed her a letter. From Daniel. She read it silently. Just 2 lines. "I was wrong about you. But it's too late, isn't it?" She folded the letter and tucked it into her coat pocket. Then, with a quiet smile, she whispered to the wind, "Yes." Daniel Wallace stared at his phone like it had betrayed him. The internet was on fire. Every news outlet, from Forbes to TMZ, had the footage. Him and Sabrina laughing in that hotel suite, his words clear as crystal. "She's the name. You're the fun." By the time the sun rose, his name had become poison. Sponsors pulled out. The board voted him out. Wallace Capital's stock dropped 37% in a single day. He called lawyers. They were vague. He called friends. Voicemail. Even Gregory Wallace, his own father, sent a one-line email. Clean up your mess. You're on your own. Daniel stood in the ruins of his penthouse, alone. The furniture felt colder, the walls smaller. He picked up a photo of his wedding day. Lily in her white dress, beaming, glowing, full of belief in him. He dropped it. It shattered, and with it, so did whatever pride he had left. Across the city, Lily sat in the sunlit reading room of the Nguyen estate, her hand resting on her belly, eyes closed. She could feel her son's heartbeat through her skin, steady, strong. Elias entered quietly. It's done. She opened her eyes. He's out. Unanimous vote. He's finished. You're now the largest single stakeholder of Wallace Capital. Lily took a breath. She didn't smile, didn't celebrate. I don't want his empire, she said. I know, Elias replied, but now it's yours to dismantle or rebuild. She nodded once. Then I'll build something better, something that helps women like me. Meanwhile, Sabrina spiraled, homeless, blocked from Daniel's accounts, her phone blowing up with hate messages. She crashed at a friend's apartment in Queens, surviving on protein bars and energy drinks. She recorded a tearful apology video. It flopped. She tried to DM Lily. It bounced. No one wanted her version of the story. And then, one night, she walked into a grocery store, and someone recognized her. Hey, aren't you that girl who laughed when the pregnant lady got slapped? The entire checkout line turned. Sabrina fled. Daniel, on the other hand, had no one left to flee to. Wallace Capital was under full federal investigation. The SEC had opened a probe. He couldn't access his offshore accounts. Lily's legal team had frozen every asset that wasn't legally his, and there weren't many of those. He tried to call her. No answer. He tried again. Blocked. So he did what he'd never done in his life. He wrote a letter. A real one. By hand. He sat at his desk for hours, scribbling and scratching out every word, until finally he wrote something simple. You were never weak. I was. I thought power came from control. You showed me it comes from knowing when to let go. I'm sorry for everything. He folded it, addressed it, then burned it. Because some things were unforgivable. Lily spent the next week quietly assembling a team, not for revenge, for rebirth. She launched a foundation, the LN Foundation for Women's Equity and Protection. It would offer legal aid, emergency housing, business grants, and mentorship for women escaping abusive marriages or manipulative power structures, especially pregnant women with nowhere to go. I want to be what I needed, she told Elias, when I had no one. And within days, media outlets picked up the story. From pregnant wife slapped in public to billionaire heiress builds safe haven for women, she had become a symbol. Not of vengeance, but of resilience. One morning, she walked into the nursery that decorators had just finished. It was soft, calm, pale blues and greens, no gold, no silver, just warmth. She stood in front of the crib, placed a tiny stuffed giraffe inside, and whispered, "You will never see your mother beg for love. You'll see her build it, brick by brick." Her phone buzzed. It was a message from a young woman in Seattle. "I watched your story. I was going to stay with him, but then I saw you walk away. I just want to say, you saved me." Lily blinked back tears. It was the first time in weeks she'd allowed herself to cry. But they weren't tears of sorrow. They were release. Daniel, now living in a rented loft in Brooklyn, tried to disappear. But shame follows louder than fame. At restaurants, people whispered. In elevators, they avoided eye contact. He tried dating again. It failed. He tried job interviews. Doors stayed closed. He had money, enough to survive. But his reputation, ruined. And every night as he lay awake, one image haunted him. Not the slap, not the press, not even Sabrina, but Lily, turning and walking away without a single word. Because that was the moment he realized he hadn't lost her that night. He'd lost her long before, and never once noticed. One afternoon, Lily stepped onto the stage of a global women's summit in Paris. She wore a cream-colored maternity dress and minimal jewelry. No logos, no designer shout-outs, just her. The crowd rose to their feet before she even spoke. When the applause died down, she smiled and began. "I was once called just a bookstore girl. I was told to stay quiet, stay small, stay grateful. And for a while, I did. Until the moment someone I loved, someone I trusted, raised his hand not to protect me but to silence me." A murmur rippled through the room. And that's when I realized I wasn't the one who needed to change. The world around me did. More applause. Standing ovation. She continued, so to every woman watching, pregnant or not, silenced or visible, I see you. You're not weak, you're not overreacting, you're powerful, even when your voice shakes, especially then. And back in New York, Daniel watched the broadcast from a bar, alone. He didn't speak, he didn't drink, he just listened. And for the first time in his life, he truly heard her. Not the words, the strength behind them, the kind he never had. The day started with sunlight filtering through silk curtains, but inside Lily's mind, there was a storm. She was exhausted. Not physically, though the pregnancy was beginning to weigh her down, but emotionally. The headlines, the interviews, the expectations, the praise, the pressure. Everyone called her strong. Everyone called her brave. But no one saw the moments in between, the quiet sobs in the shower, the lingering pain from that slap, the sudden fear that maybe, deep down, she was still that woman who once begged her husband to love her. She sat alone in the nursery that morning, staring at the crib. It was perfect. White wood, organic cotton sheets, a mobile that played soft piano melodies. She had everything. Power, freedom, wealth. But her heart, still healing. Later that afternoon, she met with a group of women at her foundation's downtown center. Some were domestic abuse survivors. Others had just escaped controlling relationships. Lily listened as a woman named Darla spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. He told me if I left, no one would believe me. That I'd end up homeless, alone, that no man would ever want someone like me, pregnant and used up. Lily reached across the table and held her hand. You're not used up, she said gently. You're just getting started. Darla began to cry, and so did Lily, because it was the first time she said aloud something she hadn't even admitted to herself. That fear? The fear of being unwanted, of being permanently damaged because of what she'd endured? She still carried it, even now. Meanwhile, Daniel stood outside the Wallace Capitol building, his old empire, watching from across the street. His name had been removed from the glass entrance, replaced by a new plaque, Wallace & Gwen Foundation HQ. It wasn't even a financial firm anymore. Lily had repurposed the building to serve as a multi-level resource center for women and children. Shelters, law clinics, career coaching floors, playrooms. The same tower he used to close billion-dollar deals in now served single mothers lunch and hosted free therapy sessions. And he couldn't lie to himself. She had done more with it in 4 months than he had in 8 years. Back in the city's Upper West Side, Sabrina lay on her friend's couch, surrounded by takeout boxes and job rejections. She scrolled through her phone, nothing but negative press. Sabrina Westwood. From influencer to infamous. Public mistresses are so last season. She tried to DM a few old PR contacts, no reply. She tried to email her former agency, blocked. She tried to start a podcast, got canceled after the trailer. One comment read, "Girl, nobody wants cheating energy in their earbuds." She slammed the phone down and screamed, then cried. Not for Daniel. Not even for the life she lost, but for herself. Because maybe, just maybe, she had become the villain, and no filter could fix that. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. The baby kicked more than usual, as if sensing her unrest. She walked onto the balcony of her penthouse suite, wrapping herself in a soft shawl. The city below sparkled, loud and alive. She clutched her belly and whispered, "I'm scared too, you know. I don't know what kind of mother I'll be." Her voice cracked. "I've spent months fighting battles I didn't ask for, but no one tells you how to rebuild. They just say, move on. But what if the pieces don't fit anymore?" Behind her, Elias stepped out. He didn't say anything right away, just stood beside her in the silence. Finally he asked, "Do you regret it?" She turned to him. "Leaving him?" He nodded. "No," she said. "I regret waiting so long to leave." Then more quietly, "And I regret losing the version of myself that thought love could fix him." The next day, Lily received a letter. No return address, just her name handwritten. Inside was a sonogram. Not hers. A note attached. "I left him too. You gave me the strength. This baby will never know what fear feels like. Thank you." A stranger. Lily held the letter to her chest, and for the first time in a long time she felt peace. Not revenge, not validation, just peace. Meanwhile, Daniel tried to visit Lily's new center. He wore sunglasses, a hoodie, unshaven. Security stopped him at the door. "I'm just here to talk," he said. The guard checked a list. "Miss Nguyen doesn't take drop-ins." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Tell her it's important. She already told us what to say if you ever showed up," the guard said. She wishes you peace, but not presents. Daniel took a step back. He looked up at the tower that used to carry his name, and he realized he wasn't part of the story anymore. He was a chapter she'd already closed. Later that week, Lily hosted a panel at NYU, Redefining Power After Abuse. Hundreds attended, not for the drama, for the healing. One student asked, "What would you say to your past self if you could go back?" Lily thought for a long time, then answered, "I'd tell her to stop apologizing for needing love, to stop shrinking so others could feel tall, and to never confuse quietness with weakness." Thunderous applause, but Lily didn't smile for the crowd. She smiled for herself. Because this wasn't a comeback. This was a rebirth. It started with a knock, not on Lily's door, but on Elias's. An unmarked envelope had been slipped beneath it sometime during the early morning hours. No name. No return address. Just one line written in black ink. She was never just a wife, a flash drive. Elias stared at it, his brow furrowed. He called Lily immediately. Minutes later they were seated in the private study of her estate. The curtains were drawn. The room dimly lit. Elias inserted the drive into his encrypted laptop, his fingers hovering cautiously. "You ready for this?" he asked. Lily nodded. "Play it." The screen blinked, then displayed a high-resolution video. It was sleek, expensive. The timestamp read, 3 years ago. And at the head of the table sat Daniel Wallace and Lily. Except this version of Lily wasn't the quiet, supportive wife the world once knew. She was poised, confident, talking. And not just talking, leading. "We'll move 60% of the venture capital into hybrid tech portfolios. Keep the ESG alignment but focus on underrepresented founders," she said, tapping on a digital display. Men in suits nodded. One of them clapped. Daniel leaned forward laughing. "You should be the CEO, not me." "You're the face," Lily replied, calm but razor sharp. "I'm the architect." Elias's mouth parted slightly in shock. The footage ended. Lily said nothing. She just stared at the screen, her fingers slowly curling around the armrest of the chair. Elias turned to her. "You helped him build Wallace Capital." She nodded. From the shadows. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" She looked out the window, her voice quiet. "Because I believed love didn't need credit, and because he told me I'd ruin the brand if people knew a woman had made the decisions." Elias was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "We're not just taking back your life now, Lily. We're taking back your legacy." That afternoon a story dropped on Bloomberg. Exclusive leaked footage shows Lily Nguyen as hidden brain behind Wallace Capital's rise. The video went viral, again. Only this time the narrative flipped. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a visionary. Financial analysts dissected her strategies. Business schools praised her foresight. Women in finance rallied online, calling her the ghost builder. The world realized Lily hadn't just walked away from Daniel. She had created him. And now she had the receipts. Daniel saw the headline while walking out of a convenience store with a $6 bottle of wine and a discount sandwich. He froze in the doorway. People were watching the video on their phones. One man looked up and recognized him. "Yo, that's her husband, the one who slapped the billionaire genius." Daniel turned and walked away as fast as he could, but the shame followed. It always did now. That night, Sabrina showed up at the Wallace and Nguyen Center. She looked different. Less makeup, no heels, a backpack instead of a purse. She stood at the security desk, fidgeting. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she told the receptionist. I want to talk to her, just once." The receptionist made a call. After a long pause, she said, "Wait in the garden." Sabrina walked out to the courtyard. The winter roses were still blooming. 10 minutes passed. Then Lily appeared. She wore a long coat, scarf, and simple boots. Her belly was prominent now, 8 months along, glowing. Sabrina stood immediately. "I didn't come to apologize again. I know it's late, too late." Lily said nothing. Sabrina swallowed. "I just want to say, thank you. You exposed both of us. Him for what he did. Me for what I became." "I didn't do it to expose you," Lily replied. "I did it to protect myself, and this baby." "I know." Sabrina's voice cracked. "I was so busy trying to win, I didn't realize I'd already lost." A long silence stretched between them. Then Lily said, "What are you going to do now?" Sabrina exhaled. "Go back to school, maybe become a therapist. Someone like you changed my life. Maybe I can do that for someone else." Lily looked her in the eyes, then nodded once, and walked away. That was the last time they ever saw each other. Weeks passed. The news cycle evolved, but Lily remained at the center. Not as a scandal, as a symbol. She launched a new initiative, one that shocked even her advisors. The Wallace Venture Fund, funded entirely by her reclaimed shares from Daniel's company. A billion-dollar pool, focused solely on backing female founders, especially those who had been told they were too quiet, too soft, too emotional to lead. She gave them a chance. She gave them capital. She gave them power. And one by one, they rose. Elias stood beside her one evening, watching the news. "You know you're changing the narrative of what a survivor looks like, right?" Lily chuckled softly. "I'm not interested in narratives." "What then?" She turned, smiling. "I'm interested in legacies." Daniel, meanwhile, moved out of New York. He tried Florida, then Austin. But everywhere he went, people knew. No matter how far he ran, the video, the slap, the scandal, the fall, followed. He eventually found work consulting for startups, quietly, under an alias. But at night, when the world went still, he'd scroll through her interviews, not to stalk, not to judge, but because a small part of him was still trying to understand how he let her slip through his fingers. And on a cool spring morning, Lily gave birth. It was quiet, private, no media, no press. Just her, the baby, and a single name on the birth certificate. Elliot Victor Nguyen. She held him close, his tiny hand wrapping around her finger, and whispered, "You will never grow up in fear." Outside, the world buzzed. Deals were being made, headlines written, empires rising. But in that moment, Lily had everything she ever wanted. A new life, a new name, and finally, a future she built with her own hands. 8 months ago, Lily Nguyen was just another forgotten wife, slapped in public, humiliated in front of cameras, abandoned by a husband who saw her as nothing more than a silent ornament. Today, she stood at the entrance of a red carpet gala, not as someone's date, but as the keynote speaker. Not behind the velvet ropes, in front of them. The event was the International Women's Economic Summit, held at the iconic Plaza Hotel, broadcast live in over 30 countries. It was a gathering of world leaders, tech giants, celebrities, and policymakers. The theme, the power of rebirth. And no one embodied that more than her. As cameras flashed, Lily stepped onto the carpet in a custom cream-white suit tailored to perfection. Her heels clicked with intention. Her hair was pinned in a sleek updo, framing her high cheekbones and calm, unshakable gaze. No husband at her side, no need for one. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, dangerous, elegant, untouchable. Reporters leaned in. "Miss Nguyen, who are you wearing? Is it true you're building a women-only investment fund? Do you have a message for Daniel Wallace tonight?" She simply smiled and walked, because for once, the only voice she needed to amplify was her own. Inside, the ballroom was nothing like the one she'd walked out of all those months ago. This time, she didn't feel small. She didn't need to blend in. She belonged here. The host's voice echoed through the hall. "And now, it is our great honor to welcome the woman who went from silent victim to global visionary, founder of the LN Foundation and Wallace Venture Fund, Lily Nguyen." Thunderous applause. She took the stage, one hand resting gently on the podium, the other on the delicate emerald necklace she wore, her mother's, passed down through generations of resilient Vietnamese women. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady. "I used to believe power was something other people gave you, that it was granted in boardrooms, behind closed doors, with signatures and contracts and last names, but I was wrong." The audience leaned in. Power isn't given, it's remembered. It lives inside you, quiet, buried, waiting for the moment you decide enough. Daniel watched from a cheap hotel room in Miami. The TV flickered with Lily's image, elegant, commanding. He sat on the edge of the bed, wearing the same hoodie he'd worn for 3 days, face unshaven. "And so I left," Lily continued on screen, "not because I was weak, but because I finally realized I wasn't." The room went quiet. He turned off the TV and sat in the silence. That was the last time he ever watched her speak. Back in New York, Lily's world was expanding. The Wallace Venture Fund, renamed Nguyen Future Capital, now backed over 40 startups founded by women of color. Her foundation had opened centers in 3 new cities. She'd become a mentor, a speaker, and an investor. But most importantly, she was now a mother. Elliot was 3 months old, healthy, smiling, already gripping her finger with surprising strength. At home, her days were quiet, simple. Morning cuddles, afternoon board meetings, evening walks in the garden. No chaos, no shouting, no pretending, just peace. One day, while walking with Elliot in the stroller, she passed a bookstore. Her old life flashed before her, ringing up paperbacks, making small talk with customers, dreaming quietly of something more. She walked inside. The owner, a kind older woman, looked up. "Are you?" Lily smiled. "Yes, but today I'm just browsing." She picked out a copy of The Art of War, paid in cash, and left. Because even in Rebirth, she hadn't forgotten how the war began. Meanwhile, Elias was arranging something special behind the scenes. "You've built something bigger than revenge," he told her over dinner one night. Lily raised an eyebrow. "What are you plotting?" "You'll see." He wasn't exaggerating. The next week, she was surprised with an offer from the United Nations, an invitation to speak at the Global Leadership Summit in Geneva. Topic? Quiet strength, the new face of power. She accepted. But before she left, she did one more thing. She sat down with a camera crew. Not for a documentary, not for a movie, but for a legacy. The video began with soft piano music, black screen, then her voice. "I am not the woman you saw at that gala." Cut to clips of her holding Elliot, working with survivors, reading letters from women around the world. "I'm the woman who survived it, rebuilt from it, rose through it." Footage of her speaking at summits, launching funds, walking down hospital hallways. Then one line, "I didn't want to be strong, I had to be." The video went viral in under 3 hours, 20 million views, and counting. That evening, she sat on her balcony, Elliot asleep in her arms. The wind was soft, the world quiet. She whispered, "One day you'll ask me what happened, why your father's not around, why mommy had to walk away." She kissed his forehead, "And I'll tell you the truth, that I didn't walk away because I was scared. I walked away because I wasn't anymore." Across the globe, women were watching her story unfold, not as drama, but as a blueprint, not of heartbreak, but of transformation. Because Lily hadn't just moved on. She had leveled up. The room was bathed in warm light, velvet curtains framing floor-to-ceiling windows. The air buzzed with low murmurs. Investors, board members, global media. Everyone was waiting. It wasn't just another event. This was the Wallace Capital 20-year anniversary gala. The same gala that once broke Lily. The same room where a pregnant wife was slapped across the face in front of New York's elite. But tonight she wasn't just attending, she was running it. The company had been renamed months ago, Guian Wallace Global Impact Ventures. After the board unanimously voted Lily in as executive chairwoman, what was once Daniel's empire, tainted with scandal and greed, was now a global force in equity-based investment and ethical venture capital. And tonight was her moment. In the mirror, Lily stood in silence. Her gown shimmered in silver, custom-made, floor-length, sleeveless. A sleek crown braid held her hair in place, soft waves flowing down her back. Around her neck, a single sapphire glinted, calm, steady, unbreakable. Her assistant peeked in. "They're ready for you." She took one deep breath and stepped out. Flashbulbs exploded. People rose to their feet. Lily walked down the same marble floor where she had once stood, cheeks red from humiliation, head bowed in shame. But this time, her chin was lifted, her eyes fierce, her presence unstoppable. No longer Daniel's wife, now the chairwoman, the architect, the queen. The orchestra began to play a powerful instrumental. The audience quieted. Lily stood at the podium, her voice echoing across the grand ballroom. "Exactly 2 years ago, I walked out of this room in silence. I left behind a name, a man, and a future I thought I needed." She paused. "But what I didn't leave behind was myself." Daniel watched the live stream from a cheap studio apartment in San Diego. He was barefoot, sitting on a couch with torn cushions, eating reheated noodles. When Lily appeared on the screen, he didn't blink. He didn't move. He just listened. "Power," she continued, "isn't inherited. It isn't bought. It's remembered. It's chosen. It's rebuilt." The room erupted in applause. Daniel lowered his gaze, not in anger, in understanding. He had spent his life chasing power. She had become it. Back at the gala, Lily introduced the newest venture under her leadership, Project Elliot, named after her son. A billion-dollar tech incubator designed to fund young women in STEM, especially single mothers and abuse survivors with genius-level potential but zero support. "This isn't about revenge," Lily said. "It's about regeneration." The screen behind her lit up with faces. Real women, real stories, real breakthroughs. She had gone from betrayal to blueprint, and everyone knew it. In the back of the room, Gregory Wallace, Daniel's father, watched silently. He hadn't spoken to his son in over a year. But tonight, he walked up to Lily during the intermission. "You saved what my son tried to destroy," he said quietly. Lily looked him in the eye. "I didn't save it," she replied. "I rebuilt it." He nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I always underestimated you." She offered a tight smile. "You weren't alone." Then walked away. Outside on the balcony, Lily stood with Elias, sipping tea instead of champagne. The city lights danced below. "You do realize this is your full circle moment, right?" Elias asked. Lily smiled. "No, this is my next circle, bigger, cleaner, mine." He chuckled. "I hope Daniel's watching." She nodded. "He is." The final part of the night was unexpected. As the orchestra slowed and guests prepared to leave, Lily returned to the stage. "There's one more thing I'd like to share," she said, gesturing to the screens. A video montage began, but it wasn't corporate, it was personal. Clips of her holding Elliot, building nurseries and shelters, sitting with survivors, reading bedtime stories. Her voice narrated over the scenes. "I left a man who once told me I didn't belong in his world. But today, I stand in a world I built. And I'm not the exception, I'm the proof that women rise. That silence is a weapon, but so is strategy." Tears welled up in the eyes of guests. And as the video faded to black, the screen displayed one simple message. "To every woman who ever doubted her worth, your story isn't over. It's just beginning." The crowd erupted in applause. Some stood, some cried. But everyone knew. History had just been rewritten. Daniel, still watching from his laptop, finally closed it. He sat in silence, then looked around his bare apartment. He picked up his phone. No missed calls, no unread texts, just one unsent draft. "I'm proud of you, even if I never deserved you." He stared at it, deleted it, then turned off the light. Meanwhile, Lily returned home to a quiet apartment overlooking Central Park. Elliot was asleep, bundled in soft blankets. She kissed his forehead. "You'll never have to see the kind of woman I was before I remembered who I am," she whispered. Then stepped into her study, lit a candle, sat down, and began drafting a letter not of war but of wisdom. "To the woman reading this 5 years from now," it began, "who thinks her story ended with a betrayal." She smiled as she wrote. It didn't. 5 years had passed. 5 quiet, powerful, breathtaking years. Lily Nguyen, now known globally as the architect, stood on the stage of the World Summit on Women and Wealth in Singapore. Cameras flashed, delegates from over 70 countries filled the grand auditorium. She didn't just walk in anymore. She arrived. Draped in a deep navy power suit, her presence silenced rooms before she even spoke. Her once soft voice now carried the weight of millions. Her signature emerald ring glinted under the lights, a subtle tribute to where she came from and what she'd risen above. She smiled as the moderator handed her the mic, and just like that, it all came full circle. 5 years ago, she began, I was pregnant, invisible, and silenced in a room very much like this one. A few people nodded. Some even stood quietly, survivors who knew exactly what she meant. I was told to keep quiet, to not cause a scene, that if I left, I'd never make it on my own. She let the silence breathe. But what they forgot was that a storm doesn't need permission to change the sky. The audience broke into soft applause. But tonight, I'm not here to talk about pain. I'm here to talk about purpose. She glanced at the front row, where Elliot sat, now 5, wearing a tiny tailored blazer and sneakers. He waved. She winked. My son doesn't know that I ever cried over a man. He doesn't know I once questioned my worth. All he knows is that his mother builds things, helps people, tells the truth. Back in New York, Daniel Wallace sat in a modest co-working space, sipping black coffee, watching Lily on his laptop. He had started a small business consulting firm. Quiet, legit, honest. He was no longer the man who dominated headlines, just a man trying to live without hurting people. He watched her speak, not with bitterness, not anymore, but with awe. Because time had taught him what ego once blinded him to see, he was never the main character in her story. She was. She always had been. As Lily wrapped up her speech, she ended with a line that would go on to be quoted for generations. To every woman who thinks silence makes her safer, I say this. Your story doesn't start when someone chooses to love you. It begins the moment you choose to love yourself. Standing ovation, flashbulbs, global headlines within minutes. Lily Gwen closes summit with powerful message on self-worth. Backstage, Elias greeted her with a quiet smile. "You did it," he said. She shrugged playfully. "Again." He handed her a letter, handwritten, aged, sealed with wax. "This came yesterday, from an anonymous source. We think you should read it." She raised an eyebrow. Later that evening, after the gala, she sat alone in her hotel suite, Elliot asleep in the next room. She opened the letter. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "If I could go back, I'd never raise my hand. Not in anger, only in apology. You were never the mistake. I was, and I hope you keep building, even if I'm not there to see it." No signature, but she knew, and for the first time in years, she felt nothing. No hate, no longing, no sadness, just peace. She folded the letter, placed it in the fireplace, and watched it burn. In the years that followed, Lily's empire only grew. Nguyen Future Capital expanded into Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. Project Elliot produced over 700 startups. Her foundation helped over 20,000 women find shelter, safety, and independence. But her greatest legacy was invisible. It was in the women who stopped apologizing, the girls who spoke louder, the mothers who walked away from men who told them they were too emotional, too soft, too complicated. It was in every woman who now looked in the mirror and said, "I am enough." One night, sitting on the porch of her family estate, Elliot climbed into her lap. "Mom," he asked, "why don't I have a dad like other kids?" Lily didn't flinch. She kissed the top of his head and said, "Because you have a mom who decided to give you the best version of love." He thought about it, then smiled. "I like that. So do I." And so, the woman who once walked out of a ballroom in silence, walked into history as a force of nature. She didn't need revenge to win. She didn't need to ruin anyone. She just needed to remember who she was, and refuse to forget it again. To the woman listening to this, maybe you're tired, maybe you're doubting yourself. Maybe someone told you you'd never survive without them. But let Lily be the reminder. You were never weak. You were just waiting. And the moment you choose yourself, the whole world will have no choice but to follow. Because there is nothing more powerful than a woman who rises. Not to beg, not to prove, but to lead. So the story has ended, and our wonderful friends, are you still here with us? If you are, it means something in this story has touched your heart, hasn't it? Maybe it reminded you of your own silence, your own pain, or maybe the moment you chose to rise. You see, healing doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like walking away quietly. As heterodoxism says, not all strength is loud. Some power whispers and still moves mountains. If Lily's story taught us anything, it's that silence can be the beginning of strength, not the absence of it. So now I ask you, what are you ready to reclaim? If this touched you, please don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments, what's one thing you've survived and turned into power? We read everything. We're here. You're not alone.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.